Michael Jaquavius Cole had always dreamed of having a big family. As a youngster, he'd often fantasized about meeting the love of his life and having many children. But when he was just 10 years old, tragedy struck. This was how he learned that nothing came easy in life. Living in Virginia, Mike was just like any other 36-year-old. He was proud of everything he'd managed to accomplish in his life. He built quite the life for himself during his 20s. He had a rocky start to his life, but he managed to turn it all around for himself. He found a good job and an amazing wife who meant everything to him. He never thought that it would all come crumbling down around him. He met Marissa, the love of his life, during his college years. She gave him a chance, and 4 years later, they got married. But the problems popped up while they were trying to get pregnant. Naturally, people want a house full of children after getting married. But Mike and Marissa were facing a big problem. They were unable to have children in the traditional way. When they got married, they promised to stand by each other through thick and thin. But this would be too much for the couple. They decided to see a doctor friend to confirm what they were already suspecting. When the doctor confirmed that Mike couldn't have his own children, they were heartbroken. Seeing their hurt expressions, the doctor quickly reminded them that her revelation didn't mean he couldn't be a dad. She gave them a good solution to the problem, but this solution would drive them to end their relationship. When they got home, the couple took a seat and discussed how they would handle the situation. Mike had drifted between foster families in his younger years, which was why he suggested becoming foster parents. Mike understood the pain of not having a stable and loving family. He wanted to give that to a needy child somewhere in his state. He had no idea what troubles were lurking ahead. While they were talking, Marissa really listened to him. Hearing him out, she even suggested they look into adoption. The more they spoke about it, the more he resonated with her idea. Marissa wanted something more permanent, so she suggested adoption, but she wasn't ruling out being foster parents. Mike had no clue what Marissa was planning. Marissa told Mike about a few different adoption and foster care agencies around their state. Not long after this conversation, the couple was foster parents to 2 amazing children. Everything was going well until one day when Marissa made another suggestion. Marissa wanted more children, and this time she was looking into adoption. She managed to find the perfect kids, but there was one thing she wasn't telling him. Mike took a look at the 3 boys. The first, Jody, had just turned 15. His little brothers, Aiden and Lester, were 12 and 9, respectively. But the fact that they were already grown wasn't what threw Mike off. The kids bore such a striking resemblance to Marissa that Mike had to sit in bed and turn on the lights to study the photos better. The problem was slowly rearing its head. The fact that the 3 brothers looked like Marissa struck Mike as odd. He'd known her throughout college. In all those years, he'd known her as a childless woman looking to start a family with him. He considered the brothers possibly being her nephews, but remembered that all of her brothers and cousins were almost 2 decades younger than her. What was happening? Mike decided not to worry too much about the matter. Even he had a few people around the state that could be confused for him. He also wanted to make his wife happy, and if opening up his home to the 3 brothers was the key to that happiness, he would gladly do it. As Mike and Marissa drove them to their house, Mike realized one thing Marissa hadn't mentioned. She and the brothers knew each other. Marissa had never mentioned meeting the boys before. She'd also acted like she didn't know them in their previous meetups. But that drive home convinced Mike that something else was underfoot. The 4 sang along to songs Mike never knew Marissa liked and even shared inside jokes. He should have known that his issues were only starting. Mike told Marissa that he felt like she had met the brothers before and even knew them on a first-name basis. He expected Marissa to deny everything, but he'd soon get the shock of his life. Marissa didn't even bother to deny what Mike was saying. She nodded her head with a grin, still acting innocent. "Of course, I know them," she said. "How?" Mike asked, unsure of what to think. He thought he knew everything about his wife. She was the love of his life after all. How could he not know this? "What do you mean, how?" Marissa asked. She reminded Mike that she'd done charity work back in college. She assured him that she met the first 2 brothers then, while they were still babies. Mark took in a sharp breath. Although he wanted to believe his wife, He knew things would never be the same. He'd never outlive his guilt for not believing her if she were telling the truth. But if she were lying, he'd never forgive her for hurting him this way. The two went to sleep that night without even saying goodnight. But as dawn came, things seemed to have cooled down. It was like they didn't have their biggest fight the previous night. From a young age, Mike had always known to trust his gut. So he kept his eye open as the weeks rolled by, praying that his gut wasn't right this time. But it wasn't long before he caught something that made him lose all hope. Mike had come home early that day when he discovered that Marissa was hiding something from him. She was in the kitchen, making the kids a snack with her phone in her ears as she cheerfully talked away. But everything changed when Marissa realized he had been watching her all this while. She asked him how long he had been looking at her and what he had heard. She seemed too defensive about the matter, talking about personal space before storming out of the kitchen. When he asked who she was on the phone with, she maintained that it was her mom. Something was not right. Marissa didn't change one bit of her story, but she spent the night with her phone glued to her face, reading through text messages and replying to some of them. Mike, who had started the night pretending he didn't care what she was doing, was more than hurt. The next day, he wouldn't go to work. One way or another, he'd get to the bottom of what was happening. Marissa was out of the house when Mike got hold of his phone. They had never had secrets, so he couldn't understand why she was hiding things from him now. After hours of debating whether or not he should go through her phone, he finally caved and opened it, rushing straight to the call log and text messages. What he would find would leave him speechless. Most of the messages were from Marissa's friend, a doctor in town. The conversations were mainly about Marissa's relationship with Mike and their kids. But that wasn't all. Deep within the sea of messages was a topic that grabbed Mike by the scruff of his neck. He finally saw the truth that had been hidden to him for so long. It turns out that Marissa was 2 months pregnant with Mike's baby. She was so startled by the occurrence that she couldn't even share with him. She feared he'd think she went out of their marriage after starting their beautiful family. Over the past few weeks, she'd been frequenting the doctor for checkups. Each test had come out positive, which is why she seemed so distressed. But that wasn't all. Marissa shared about their fights over the kids. Her friend had been among the individuals who accompanied her in her volunteering days back in college. She knew the boys as much as Marissa did, given that she'd been present when they were born and was the one who introduced them to Marissa. But that meant a dark thought flickered in Mike's mind. Mike now had all the info he had hoped for from the phone. But that didn't mean it was over. All of the facts brought up more questions, and these questions were even darker than before. Mike couldn't believe what he was reading. How did Marissa get pregnant when he couldn't sire any? Mike knew that he had to think of a plan. He'd have to figure out what was going on. He would be over the moon if they had a new child. But he would be absolutely devastated if his suspicions were correct. After thinking about it for a moment, he decided to go into his wife's phone book. He hated prying any further, but he needed to know exactly what was going on in his life. Mike found the doctor's number and copied her number into his own phone. With that accomplished, he could go ahead with the next phase of his plan. He was about to call the doctor. After hitting the call button, after 10 seconds of waiting, the doctor answered the phone. Hello. Mike's voice was shaky. Hi, I'm Mike, Marissa's husband. Would you mind putting my mind at ease? I know Marissa's pregnant, but I need to know how that's possible. Hi, Mike. This is normally confidential information, but since you're Marissa's husband, I guess it's only right that you know what's going on. Mike felt his heart beat faster. Was she about to hit him with the truth like a ton of bricks? Or would he be disappointed yet again? Just as the doctor told Mike the truth, Marissa walked back into the house. His mouth was wide open as he finished the conversation with, "Thanks, Doc, I gotta go," and put the phone down. He looked at Marissa and wondered if she was aware that he knew that she knew the truth. He was about to shake her entire world with his discovery, so much that their lives would never be the same again. Tears filled his eyes as he grabbed Marissa and hugged her. "We're having a baby," he said in a choked voice. The truth that Mike had just heard on the phone was much simpler than he ever could have expected. It was a miracle. It seemed that somehow, against all odds, Marissa was pregnant with his baby. It was the happiest day of his life.